Oh, acá estamos, el video de Halloween para hablar del terror extremo francés. Género que, bueno. De hecho, la palabra terror extremo es de un crítico de ese cine. Ahora que le voy a mandar las invitas. Ahí va. Hey, Brannon. Great. Um, mm, mm. Tun, tun, turu, tu, tu. Bueno, I send you the invitation. Oh, Clara, hi, welcome. Great. Uh-uh.
Hola, ¿cómo
Oh,
va?
hi. We have to speak English. I send the
Yes,
invitation to Brannon. He have already seen Titane, and I hope he has the last update like the last time. Let me see.
of the film, are we going to speak about Titane?
Well, also, but all the extreme French movement that actually is.
That's
Hey, Brannon,
great.
hi.
Hi.
Hi, Brandon, how are you?
Hey,
Long
good to
time no see.
I know. Good to see you again.
That's great, that's great.
Box.
So how,
Well,
happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
we were talking about that. You were saying that the extreme horror, the name extreme horror, actually was from a critic that actually criticized all this movement. But the truth is, the movement of the extreme horror, French extreme is not new. You talk about the Marquis de Sade, and you were right. I think you were right. The French culture has its tradition of extreme horror.
Well, look, one of the topics that is not written about a lot in America, there are maybe 2 books about the Grand Guignol Theater, which was around from 1897 to the 1960s before that theater closed. And the Grand Guignol was pure shock cinema on the stage, and it was gory and shocking and extreme, and I think hugely influential, hugely popular. But they were little one-act plays that did have something to say, and I think that's the difference to me in the tradition of French extreme horror. That I think Marquis de Sade is a horror writer. If you actually read the books, they're pure body horror. It's torture, and there's a psychosexual component to it, which is also very prevalent in French extreme horror.
Yeah.
But as a fan of Grand Guignol, a very little talked about theater, at least here in America, almost people kind of know the term, but they don't really know what it was and the profound influence that it had. And like Grand Guignol, the French extreme horror, whoever coined that term, has something to say. It's oftentimes political, it's socio-economic. French horror has something on its mind, and that's when one of my favorite horror movies ever is Martyrs. Now, a lot of people would say that Martyrs is borderline pornographic. It was very in its violence, but I think it's just also one of the great philosophical pictures I've ever seen, with the greatest ending ever.
Yes.
And it's a philosophical ending, not just a horror ending. It's you have to see the movie. You have to actually go live through the movie to really understand what I'm talking about. And I think Titan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, to me, I haven't seen Nocturna yet, but Titan was the best movie of the year. I mean, it just blew everything else out of the water. Why? It's full on French extreme horror, body horror, whatever you want to call it. That's just too simplistic. But it's so transgressive, and I would describe it as
very new, like very original.
Very original and reckless in a way that American filmmakers wouldn't dare. You wouldn't even pitch some of the things that are in this movie without getting your entire career destroyed. Yeah. Like, this movie is a masterpiece. And I haven't seen Nocturna, but that's not French. But anyway, sorry to go on a diatribe, but I just think that the tradition of French, this kind of French horror, goes way back. It has a long history, not just in movies, you know.
You know That's what? True. I think that there is also something about the history of France and the culture there that also influences the body horror and the extreme horror. Like, when I first saw something like that was Delicatessen from Luc Besson. And when I saw it, I was blown away, because there is something that sometimes we feel like we have to be politically correct when we do something. But I think there is an advantage for Titane that it's a woman that has written and directed the story. So this is something that is told from a woman's perspective that has also a past of films that are very transgressional and very extreme in a way. There is a woman on like the lead is a woman, also this father, but it's also very feminine. I feel like when I see a woman's film, I see the femininity in it. I don't know if maybe you get what I'm saying, but it's a very feminine film in a way for me. When I watch it, I said, this is a film that a woman director filmed it, and I can feel this. And I think that there is also a sense of the culture of the place where that movie is coming from. Every time I see a film, I can feel the culture coming to the story and the way it's filmed and the way it's displayed. And that is something very beautiful, because French cinema can have this characteristic of being not so politically correct. Like, when I saw Delicatessen, I was like, wait, but this guy was the guy that filmed no, it was not Luc Besson, Jean-Pierre Jeunet. No, Jean-Pierre Jeunet. He also made Alien the Fourth, Alien 4, and I thought that this, yes, I saw Amélie, and then I saw, I will watch every single one of the films of this guy, and suddenly I saw Delicatessen, and I was like, what am I seeing right now? Like, there is sex, there is gore, there is comedy, dark comedy, and I really enjoy. It's very, but it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone.
Well, nor is
Martyrs is not for everyone.
Titan makes Delicatessen look like a Disney movie. I
mean,
it's definitely not for everybody. You're absolutely right. You know, it is a powerful female perspective, as was Raw, her first film.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think there are things in this movie that had to be filmed by a woman.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It would not have worked. It would not have been appropriate. It would not have been authentic. It had. This is a movie that could only have been directed by this particular woman, who, in this particular imagination. But I think the fact that it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes is not surprising to me. And I'm really happy to see that they picked this movie, because it's a horror movie, make no mistake. It's also a family picture.
Yeah.
And like the best horror is moving. It's a moving, largely thanks to the, I can't remember the actor's name who plays the fireman. What a central piece of empathy that the movie needed. And I found it very moving. I found the whole thing just, you know, kind of touching, like the best horror movies can do.
Yeah, but a lot of people think that, well, horror is about, you know, jump scares, about, you know, gore, but it's not like that. The best horror movies we mentioned what Let the Right One In, Martyr. It's about a story. It's about creating empathy for these characters. And I remember seeing that when I was seeing Titan. Well, of course, there's a lot of, you know, brutal scenes, but when the female character connects with this you know, fireman that you know, believes his son, or at least he wants to believe, because deep down he knows he's not. I mean, I start, you know, feeling sorry for this girl, that in a way he's like looking for a father figure. So okay, it's a horror movie, but
It's
I feel
also
deep down it's a drama. It's a drama
it's
about
it's
someone, you know.
it's a father son daughter movie.
Yeah.
And
I
because, you know,
think also
the very first scene is very important. It shows not an
yeah,
empathetic father, an apathetic father,
what a scene.
a lack of emotion, even when the girl's in the hospital. Like, it is, even as an adult, she's still living with them, and she lacks any connection. And and she finds it in this guy, and they want to believe in one another, and they ultimately, I mean, and what a brilliant decision on the director's part to cast a completely unknown actress, which had to happen, because if it had been someone you're familiar with, you were mesmerized by her transformations.
Exactly.
There were times I wasn't sure if I was looking at the same actor. How could this person later in the film had been the woman doing the dance on the car earlier? How could it be the same person? The movie is, again, it's a masterpiece. I can't recommend it to all of my family members, and I can't say enough about it. And I'm so glad I saw it in the theater.
You saw
No,
it in the theater? That's great.
Oh, that's great. No, but I mean, I was amazed by the transformation. I mean, and I remember one of the scenes that really, you know, create empathy with for this character was when the father was dancing, and for the first time she looked at him and she smiles like a tender smile, and I feel good for her. I mean, and of course, in the beginning of the movie, it's difficult to, you know, empathize with this girl, because she does, you know, very terrible things. She's looking for murder and everything. But at that point, after seeing all the suffering and all the misery she's living, you know, she's experimenting, and when I see this moment of relief of when he see the joy of this, you know, person that he believes she is his son, I felt good for her, and that changed everything. I mean, I really, and for me, there's an emotional scene where, of course, he realized he's a pregnant girl, but he said to her, "I don't care who you are my son." And that moment for me was.
It's a love story, and it's a film about identity. And I mean, this woman is so disconnected that she identifies more with cars. You know, a lot of was made of the car sex thing, and everyone. I thought, oh, is this Crash again or something? That's a small part of the movie, but it's a commentary to her dislocation as a human being, and ultimately, it's a movie about a connection, finding love, like any great movie has that component to it. So I think it's a movie that will be hugely influential and talked about for a long time. It will go down as one of the great.
I think that it's a movie that is full of themes and topics that makes it like a rich movie for every person to just watch it and feel things. And once it ends, you start thinking about a lot of stuff that it's on your mind after you see it, and maybe when you're watching it, you aren't really thinking about them, but when it stops, when it ends, then is when you start. Oh, maybe this means trauma. This means family. It means I don't know, gender, and maybe transsexuality. When it ended, I think I started to feel things that I didn't in a really long time. And maybe the last time I remember that I felt those things was when I saw a movie called Border. It's a Swedish movie, and you start empathizing with these creatures.
Yeah.
They are trolls, and I don't know. It's so moving, so touching, and I don't know. You
Well,
really reminded me of
yeah.
that.
It also makes you feel things you haven't felt ever, and I think it's also worth mentioning how well made. I mean, if we're going to list off the great French horror movies, or what would be considered going back to Diabolique, all the way to Delicatessen, to High Tension, to all the movies that
Irreversible.
exactly.
Gaspar Noé.
They're all also, I think it's important, really well written and really well made. I mean, these are not, as you were saying, these aren't your average slasher movies. They're works of art. I mean, in their way.
It's not only shock value. It's
exactly.
No, and I think that there is something that is nowadays a trend that maybe I saw it more in like the Oriental Korean films that came to be like in approximately 15 years ago, that it doesn't have to be black or white. I mean, when you are watching nowadays horror films, they are very locked up with drama and really complex stories. Like, for example, Ari Aster films or Eagers. They're films that are very complex, with complex characters and complex narrative. And I think that there is something special here, that is telling stories through horror genre, but that are immersed with all this drama, that maybe if you just tell the drama without this sparkle of another thing, that in this case maybe horror or fantasy, like in Border, maybe it's too dense to tell the story about that. Because maybe when I started seeing Titane, my brother has Asperger, and I saw the first minute I saw her, I saw my brother, and I was like, this is my brother, like this woman represents my brother, or maybe it's my way of watching the film. But maybe if I see a dense film about maybe this sort of Asperger, transsexual, or whatever it may be, drama, maybe it's too dense for me. But I need this purge inside me of my demons or my trauma or my sadness through the art. I think that is very important, and it's very important to have in mind having maybe this cathartic sense when you watch a film. No, when you finish watching this film, when you have those moments, it's like a sort of purge of your darkness. And maybe it's easier for, in my opinion, when I see the reaction of a film, I can feel that maybe it's better sometimes to use the metaphor or use this realismo mágico, this sort of, to maybe let go of something that maybe if you just saw it literally spoken, what you want to talk about, it's too dense. Like maybe if I didn't see the dance at the beginning with the cars and the sex with the car, maybe it would be different to just see the depression of the girl living with the apathic parents and the absence of a bond and the loneliness. So it's better maybe to put a little bit color.
No, well, I mean, it penetrates, the themes of this movie penetrate your consciousness much deeper because of the shocking nature of the film and the colors and the sounds. It's a loud movie. It's a
Exactly.
it's a deeply saturated movie. You know, it's and you'll never forget it. And let's just be honest, it was fun. I mean, it was a blast.
Mm-hmm.
And you had no idea where it was going. Like, it was just so wildly. Again, it's the only word I can use to describe this movie is reckless. Like, it is just, she let loose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like,
I love that. I love that. And that is something that I think people should do more. Like this sort of euphoria and explosive letting go is something that maybe because of being like politically correct with this thing and this thing and this thing, maybe sometimes we are so politically correct that we never touch like the deepness of the human nature that we need to touch to tell a film and a story that needs to be told, no?
this
O sea,
a lot of personal risk. I mean, there's no. I mean, the reactions to the movie could have been any number of. I mean, it won the highest prize, and the second
Well,
one.
Gaspar Noé is irreversible.
Oh, by the way,
half people went out of the movie.
We're talking, the movie we're talking about is Titan.
No, yeah.
yes,
No.
yes.
No,
No, here because people
for
are asking. Yeah, I'm writing down the name of the film for the people that are asking, so you can watch it.
It's out now.
Great movie.
It's out.
Talking about you mentioned Mark before as one of.
Well, I saw this in a theater, and it was filled with people who, a lot of whom I overheard their conversations, some of which were in French because it's Montreal. But it was clear to me that, first of all, that a lot of these people were seeing it for not the first time.
Ah, really?
And
So cool.
and there were a lot of young people. They're like, this is going to be a huge influence a generation of filmmakers, I think. And
Yes.
and I'm really glad that it broke through. You know,
Sure.
It has, you know, I think about Martyrs, which didn't break through. Martyrs did not. Martyrs is a masterpiece too, in my opinion, in its way. I don't like it as much, but maybe because I haven't seen it recently. But I really think it did not. It was rejected, I think, by the mainstream.
It was an early bird, in my opinion. It was sort of like, it was sort of a very, when sometimes there are some films that are ahead of their time, and people just reject because they cannot tolerate something so bold in a way, no? To tell a story. So that is something that it's like, for example, Carpenter's Thing was really rejected by the public when they saw it, but it became a masterpiece. It became one of the masterpieces of Carpenter, and I think that it's one of my favorite films. But it wasn't even a box office. It was like really bad.
Yeah.
What?
E.T. had come out. People weren't in the mood for bad aliens. But, I remember seeing The Thing in the theater, and the theater was empty.
Oh my God! How can that be? I need to watch it in a big screen.
Oh, yeah.
I think
it's before the pandemic. Somebody in LA found the only existing 70 millimeter print of The Thing.
No.
What? Where?
Yeah. I don't know where. At a vault somewhere, and they screened it at a 70 millimeter.
Where?
Here in
beautiful.
Brentwood.
Why wasn't I there? I mean, why?
The print was a little faded, but it was still pretty cool to see the movie that way. But yeah, so I mean, Prince horror.
No,
Prince
I
horror,
think
yeah.
The thing about Martyrs and the problem with the movie is that we talked about this before. I remember that the ending is so nihilistic, is so existential, and that's a second characteristic that defines French culture. I mean, if we can talk about the Marquis of Sade, but also we can talk about Camus, the Camus, that is a very Sartre. They're very existential. It's talking about questioning whether if life has a meaning, and the answer of the French philosophers are if there is no. I mean, maybe there is no meaning. I mean, we have to look the meaning in everyday action, and in this way, Martyrs is a very we can call it a pessimistic movie regarding this philosophical question, because the answer to this question is there is no meaning to life. It's just this.
The woman who found the answer to whether or not life has meaning blows her brains out, but we never really find out.
Yeah.
But
so
it's also like a lot of French horror, hilarious. I mean, the ending is so, you have to laugh. I mean, it's actually kind of funny. There's much of Titan is, I pronounced it 5 different ways now. It's a funny movie too. I mean, even in the midst of a killing spree, there's a hilarious moment.
Yeah.
Where
the sequence where she kills everyone in a house, it's more of a comedic style. When suddenly starts appearing a lot of other people, and she's like, "Oh no, you!" It's
but
so
but Martyrs also, though, perhaps it didn't have a central emotional piece of empathy to hang on to. It had a woman who was in the midst of this torture, but it didn't have like the relationship. I think it was such a brutal movie. Unflinching.
The intention of Pascal Laurent, that's the director, was to build this idea, because at the end of the movie, I was waiting for the answer. I mean, I was there. Okay, I passed through all this terrible experience watching this girl being tortured physically and mentally. I want to know why. I want to know, I mean, why these people are doing this for, or what are the, I mean, and the answer is so, well, the answer is, there is no answer, or at least the answer is, it doesn't matter. I didn't laugh. I wanted, the first time I watched a movie, I wanted to kill the director, and I was, come on. I mean, I was like, come on. I wanted the answer. The answer is, sorry, there's no meaning.
Well, we don't know. We don't know what she found out. It was the perfect. It's one of the great movie endings of all time. I don't think most people would agree with me. It's not Cinema Paradiso, but it's a great. But
yeah.
No.
I think the best endings in every movie are the ones that leads to discussion and lots of answers, because if when you go out to see a movie and when it ends, you're with your friends or the people who watched it and everything, and you start speaking and discussing them, I think it makes the movie more valuable for us. And I think ultimately is the best thing in cinema to have.
Absolutely. You know, I read an interview with the what is the director's name of Titan?
The Martyrs. Julie Ducournau from Titan. Julia Ducournau.
So she gave a fascinating interview to the LA Times, which it's worth reading because, you know, for instance, she talked about how the movie, everything was, they asked her if the main character was hallucinating that she was pregnant with car? And she said, no. She said, there are no dream sequences.
Everything is happening.
Happens. And I thought that was
That's
such a fascinating answer. And if you look at the movie, she's not fucking around. She's not playing around and making you even think anything's a hallucination. She's actually not. She's right. It's just it kind of is its own reality. Anyway, there are other French horror films.
Oh yes.
No,
Well, we can
yeah.
talk about the first film she did. That's Raw. It has nothing to do with Titan, but there are a lot of similar subjects. I mean, again, there's this social and economic, maybe sociological ideas in the French film. They are telling something, and something a lot. You find in
Wait,
a
but
lot of
I
these.
think no, I think that in a way there is a lot going on between those two films. They are about family, they are about loneliness, they are about not fitting in, they are about women and their role in society. I think that there is a lot going on between those two films. I think that even the actress of Raw acts in this one. I think that it's really a woman's story, and that is something that I said at the beginning of this chat. I think that there is a lot going on about women telling stories about how women feel about certain things, you know, about how they see the world, about how they get along with their families, how they get along with people around them. And that is something that I think it's there. Even though there is some budget in one, there is another sort of photography in one of them and another one in the other one. I think that I can see that in both of them that it's a woman behind the camera trying to tell a story about this and about that.
Identity.
And so,
Trying to belong. I mean, the main subject is a person looking for identity, but also to belong to a community. Something that, well, a lot of we all are looking for, and that's very interesting about Raw. I mean, because in the end, it's about the drama, feeling loneliness. Again, the existential themes appear. Also, in other French extreme, we can also find the idea of home invasion. That is not so present in maybe in these two films, but in the other ones, for example, in Martyrs, Frontiers, well, Frontiers especially, and so on. I mean, high tension, and this had to do for me. I lived in France for one year, and there is a lot of immigration problem. There's a tension, and that's a very taboo subject in France. And when you show it like you show it in these films, I think there's an intention to try people to talk about it. I don't know what you think.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can see it. It's Korean, but with this show, Squid Game, which is a horror series, without question. It's a horror show. It's tapping right into the disenfranchisement. It's the same things Parasite tapped into. You know, when there was a tremendous economic blow that happened in South Korea in 2000, I think 8 it was. The whole world suffered, but there's a whole segment of their population that was devastated and never came back, and was cast aside by society. I think that the show is striking a deep chord around the world, and not just because it's cool and well made and very funny, but because it's about these people, and I think it's you're right about the immigration thing in France. I'd never made that connection with the home invasion subgenre, although Martyrs certainly gets that out of the way right off the bat, in one of the most shocking beginnings of a movie ever. And I will say, you know, the shock factor is in French horror is important to note. You know, Martyrs had lots of shocks. Titan has some shocks that some really, really jaw-dropping moments. But God, I forgot what point I was going to make. You know, I remember the what was the one the woman who cuts the baby out of her womb at the end.
Al
Um,
interior. Interior. In English, I don't know. Al interior, it means like inside, from inside. I think it's that.
from inside.
That,
El
that
interior.
breaking taboos. So cutting a baby out of the womb is, I just can't imagine anything, and done with full graphic display, or cannibalism like in Raw. You know, it's funny because these French horror films that we're talking about, from my experience, before I saw them, I heard about them, and what I heard was some people fainted. This movie Martyrs, you won't get through it. It's Raw. People were vomiting. They were. I went to see it. I was like bracing myself.
Well, there's a thing over there with cannibalism. I mean, it's always present in some sort of way in the horror genre of France. I mean, I just saw also a series that it's called The Immortals, I think it is called, about the French Revolution and how there are zombies, cannibalistic creatures that lurk in the high society to just live forever, no? I think that there is sort of like I think it's like a ¿cómo lo digo? Like a topic that comes along in a lot of horror films, and I think that also the gore in the French movies, it's different, because when you say well, gore, you can see Hostel, and there you can get a lot of gore, but to me it's different. In French gore, I feel it's really true what I'm seeing, like really realistic gore. It's not like watching I don't know, Nicolas Cage and Mandy chop off bodies. It's like it's really real. I mean, this could be happening to me, or this could be happening to me, and Raw, I can see like the realistic cannibalism going on, and it's not just like a sort of
I think
burdo,
that's
no?
people out. It wasn't zombie movies let you off the hook because they're cartoonish. You know, in Raw, it's pretty simple. You know,
That's the thing. Maybe it's not so complex. It's just eating something, or when they throw blood at her and she's like licking the blood out of the cadaver. I mean, there are some realistic shit going on in the French films. Sorry. But also, like, for example, in Irreversible or Gaspar Noé films, I can see that there is this rawness in how it's filmed, and there is like this sort of intensity in the sequence, that it's never ending sequence. Everything goes around, and sometimes it's like I don't know where I am. Like I have a bad trip with acid, and I'm watching this film, and I like, where am I, and what is this going on here? Basically, and suddenly I'm thrown into the gore, and it's really like there are sort of really good styles in horror French films. A lot of gore.
And again, as you say, Brown, it's not new, not only in literature, but also in cinema. I remember a film, the first extreme French horror. It's not from the 2000, it's from, I think it's 1992. It's a film called Man Bites Dog. Man Bites Dog. It's a dog. It's in 1992. And again, it deals with this nihilistic, approach on violence. For me, it's great. The translation is so bad because it's not in French. It happens near, where you live or something. Again, it's about this idea that this violence, it's not home invasion per se, but it has to do with this nihilistic violence happening around us, and we are like
kind of random violence. Yeah, that movie has one act of violence in it that I've never forgotten. It's so disturbing. It's a scene where a woman gets hit in the head and she goes into seizures. It's so disturbing. And as you point out,
disturbing.
Probably what would happen more. You know, it's I don't know. It's funny you mentioned it. I think of that movie. A lot. That movie really was disturbing. It was almost more effective than Clockwork Orange, another horror movie of sorts. It reminded me of A Clockwork Orange.
But I think that's the French artists. I mean, but we have to agree that in France, these kind of films were rejected by critics and audience. I mean, it's because they don't want to talk about these issues, and I know that because I talked with a lot of friends of mine that live in France. These issues are not subjects that people want to talk about. They want just to blind themselves, and I think that's why these kind of films, these genre films like horror films, need to be made in order to say, okay, let's talk about it, because all the random violence in the suburbs of France, it has been going on for a long time, and it's like, okay, we should talk about it. Of course, there has been a lot of drama films about the violence in the suburbs of France, like The End or the Hate or something that from Matthew Kassovitz. But I think when you do this kind of genre films, as Clara said in the beginning, it's easy to express this kind of sociological taboo subjects when you tell this story using, genre, fantasy, surrealism, or whatever. And that's why it's very important. And maybe Titan is going to, that's why it's going to be a very influential films.
It is no less. I mean, it's just as shocking and amazing as any of the movies that we're talking about. But this one went mainstream. Now, it's never going to be a box office success. Certainly not in the United States. But it's successful, and it broke through. It got the top prize at Cannes. Like, will it be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Foreign Film for one of the awards?
I think it will.
Will it? It's just interesting to see. I think it's good. It's a good sign. That horror would, I don't know.
It had to get through the awards. I mean, there is like a sort of taboo in giving awards to horror films, and for me, it's like a stupidity, because horror films are just as much as a film as any other genre. And I think there is something wrong with, for example, when I saw Midsummer and when I saw Hereditary, I saw really good films, and they were never spoken about in any like mainstream award giving festivals, and I was like, what? This or even the actors, like the
main actress should have been nominated for her.
Toni Collette deserved an Oscar for Hereditary, and she wasn't even like mentioned, and I was like,
she gave the best performance of the year by far. By far.
Totally. It's because horror has always been kind of lived in the basement. I mean, it's undoubtedly the most profitable genre in cinema history.
That's right.
One could argue the most popular. One could argue.
It is the most popular. Sorry, but I'm going to tell you. We remember the horror films. We don't remember like the comedies from 100 years ago. I mean,
that's right.
Unless it's Citizen Kane.
I mean, just looking at the new wave. Well, maybe the new wave of slasher films like Terrifier. That is like a fun film. Well, not a fun film, but a really low budget movie. And we have it in Netflix, and it's just the director doing the makeup in his best friend, and they made a gore slasher film, and it broke through, and that's for me is incredible.
Our movies are so highly innovative out of necessity because they so frequently have low budgets, and You get, innovators like John Carpenter and the director of photography. Oh my God, he's
James
legend.
Cameron also.
Dean.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson.
No, I'm talking about.
Peter
No, I'm talking
starts
about
with
Halloween, the first Halloween.
Yeah, he also made Jurassic Park, I think. Later.
There's great footage that you can find probably online of him and the Dean Cundy, the cinematographer, trying out something called a Steadicam to see if they can, doing a test shot to see if it's sustainable.
Yes, with the Panaflex.
With the first opening scene, horror is the best genre. We all know that.
It is.
But
because I tell you why horror is horror is one of the best because it's always looking to criticize, innovate, and the idea is to shock, but not. The idea is not to shock just for for fun. It's to shock, to bring a message. So sometimes the message or the ideas they want to express, they are difficult to express in other genres. And at the same time, it's a very subversive genre. That's what I love about it. It's if you think about sci-fi, horror, fantasy, they are like popular genres rejected by the cultural elites. If you see, it's very difficult to see in Cannes, in Sundance, a horror sci-fi film. It's kind of difficult. In general, for example, nowadays we have a lot of horror festivals, horror film festivals here in Latin America. There are now Morbido, Macabro, and it's about fans, but the directors are also fans. Sometimes when I talk about film directors that work other genres, if they want to make a film, it's not like they are really fans of that genre. The difference may be between, and I talked to a lot of directors from France, from Korea, from the States, when they do horror, I also see people that they love the genre. They want to see other films from other directors. We can have these conversations because we know a lot about the issue, right? So that's, I think, the difference between genre and drama and fantasy. I think maybe drama it's or comedy or are more mainstream, are like secure. Horror, it's about breaking the rules. It's a groundbreaking. It's about I don't know what you think.
Horror. Look, when The Exorcist came out, there no better made film came out that year. I can't remember if it was nominated for an Academy Award or not.
No, it wasn't. I think it wasn't.
But it was the most successful movie. It was the most talked about movie. But it's just has some stuff in it that is shocking by today's standards, quite frankly. There's some stuff in there I don't think you get away with the character of a 12-year-old girl.
It's a timeless movie also. It's
shocking. It's still shocking. And it's just not going to get the mainstream respect. And I'm looking at there's I was reading about when the Frankenstein came out and Dracula and Universal had this festival stuff on the horror movie. The people didn't know what to do with it. They were embarrassed because clearly they didn't have people who understood. But it's all changing. If you've ever been to Comic-Con in San Diego, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it's something about being politically correct. Like, for example, I'm a huge fan of Stephen King, for example, and it was a box office record in 2017, I think it was. But the film never touches any of the subjects of the book that are really there to speak about. Like, for example, the awakening of the sex impulse in the kids, or there's an orgy, for example, with the 11 years old, and there is all this sort of background about sexual abuse and everything that's going on to 11-year-old boys and girls. So I think that maybe nobody will, not to date, like not even to the date of today, no one has ever got Stephen King's It and given it life as it is written in the book, the story, because
No,
it's really politically incorrect to watch it in film, but not to read it. I read a lot of books, and quite frankly read about everything, but it's different when you read it and when you see it performed. So this is something really strange,
well,
because it's one of the best movies that was made in 2017 with the box office record and the gaining and everything. But it wasn't the story about the book. It was a story that was given into mainstream.
I agree, and I, you know, as much as I like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, it's just a different story. I mean, the book is about child abuse. It's about some heavy stuff, alcoholism. It's about stuff that probably, I don't know, people don't want to see in a horror movie. I don't know. But again, like you're talking about mainstream American horror films that, you know, I was surprised that they ripped the kid's arm off in the beginning. You know, that's
yeah.
And I happen to know, because I met one of the producers, there was a lot of debate about that. There were some people who didn't want to do it because it was too much. I thought it set a good tone. It meant that it was gonna.
It was perfect.
It was gonna go. It wasn't afraid to. It never really achieved the same level of terror, in my opinion.
Yeah. So.
But
So.
But it had to be watered down, you know, which is a funny thing to say about horror, which at its best is the opposite of watered down. But
well, coming back like to the French films, I saw like really good zombie films that are very different to the zombies we see like come from United States or from Korea. Like French zombies have their taste. Like for example, Les Nuits que dévoraient le monde or Les Infâmes are two zombie films that are really raw and really disturbing. And honestly, I think that there is a difference between the zombies that are presented in every culture, and I really recommend those films, like to watch maybe the approach that they do of the zombies or the reaction of the people and the relationships between the people in a zombie apocalypse, but in the narrative of a French eye telling the story. I mean, those are two really good films I'd like to watch. And
yeah, it's an interesting.
I honestly recommend them.
You should write an essay about zombies and how they're depicted in different cultures. I mean, that would be a fascinating paper to read.
No, but for the Korean zombie, it's a whole new zombie. I mean, the staccato that they use is something new. That is the detail that they brought to us, the Korean zombie. But we have, for example, Danny Boyle giving us the fast zombie that was a whole new kind of zombie in 28 Days Later. Like I think that and there is even, I think it's a Cuban film about a guy that gets like ashore and there is a zombie apocalypse in Cuba. And it's really funny how you see the zombie apocalypse in the Cuban eyes. So it's really interesting because the zombies are a metaphor of the society. They have always been. So it's really interesting how they picture them in the different cultures.
Yeah.
Have you watched the Cuban zombie film, Brannon, Juan de los Muertos?
Sí,
What's
esa.
Juan de los Muertos.
Juan de los
yeah.
Muertos.
Nope.
It's really good.
How do I see it?
You can Google it. I will send you the link. I will find you for you. It's very interesting because I've never seen a Cuban zombie film, and it's kind of a funny approach. Of course, there's a lot of criticism with subjects there, but it's nice to see the zombie film in, well, as Clara said, in different genres, and particularly in the Cuban, culture.
Well, I mean, we should do a special. You should do a special. Invite me back for the one about just horror in different countries. I mean, it's such a big. I just saw the movie Lamb, which is Icelandic horror.
What? But it's
So-
A24. A24. The production is
Yeah.
an A24 film, so it's a sort of style that it's setting a style that, in my opinion, is a great style of new
Same.
horror films that are coming, that are really bold in telling stories
And stylistic. Also.
yes, and I love A24 films. The A24 films are like a must-see of every horror fan.
Yeah,
Yep, that's
I
true.
love it. Unfortunately.
Yep. It's rare that you see a studio logo and you want to go see that movie.
Yeah.
Very rare. But
You know,
A24, it's an indie production. I mean, it's a production company, or it's more mainstream, because it's weird to see a big production company to release this kind of films.
Yeah, I think it's growing now.
it's growing.
Yeah, but I think
But it was
it starts
indie.
But
as
it started like an indie. Yes, I think it started like
Yeah.
an indie.
I mean,
Yeah.
look,
Isn't The Green Knight isn't from A24, or am I wrong?
See, the Green Knight. The
Green Knight
Yeah.
was beautiful.
I loved it.
you know, let's not forget there are a lot of bad horror films too. You know, but there aren't a lot of bad. But there aren't a lot of bad French horror films. Like and maybe they just never made it in my direction. But by the way, there's a French.
the thing about
I saw one about like a horror mansion, guys that come to a horror mansion, and there is like a sort of poltergeist going on there, and it was like a comedy, but really I don't remember the name. I think it was The Mansion, the name of the film. And it was really
I
like
know.
funny,
You know,
but in the same way, like really bored and lame.
You know,
to put it in
The
a way.
interesting thing is when you want to do a movie, I mean, and you want to bring something original, I think that in the French film industry, the problem is they don't have it's like in Latin America, they don't have a big budget to do films, so there are a few films and they have to invest. But the thing is about all these horror films we were talking about is they are people that are concerned expressing these ideas, and of course they come from very prestigious film schools. That's why they have this quality that you
yeah. I mean, it's interesting. The Icelandic movie Lamb was so very Icelandic. I mean, its sensibilities, and then I know I'm getting off topic here, but did anyone see that Turkish horror film? What was it called?
Baskin.
Yeah,
Baskin, are you
Baskin.
kidding
Yeah, of
me?
we are
made a
friends.
live
We are
with the
friends with the director. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can.
Oh, see that
Yeah,
movie
I
freaked me out, man.
It's
That was
amazing.
really scary.
Brandon, would you like to do
Beautiful.
a flight with the director? We can. He's a great guy. Actually,
Yeah,
he sent the art book of the
cool.
film.
Cool. Well, I'm late.
No,
I'm a
Ken
little
is
late to the party because I just saw it last year.
No, you know what? The guy,
amazing.
Can, the director, is a huge fan of Lovecraft, like huge fan, like mind-blowing fan of Lovecraft and the oniric phase of Lovecraft, the last phase of Lovecraft. And we talked about Lovecraft a lot, and all of his films are approach in an oniric world, and I think that is so disturbing in a sense that there is no escape from the oniric world when you are like that sense of when you're running but you can't run, like the dream where you're falling or you want to fly but
you
you
want
can't
to scream and you can scream.
Yeah, and I think that is translated in every single one of his films.
I'll tell you, in Baskin, there comes a point where you can't really describe it to somebody, you because it's uncanny. And uncanny is a great word to describe the best horror. I mean, you really, you can't, you know, the Titan.
It's an experience.
You could, you know, there's nothing more depressing than going on Wikipedia, and whoever writes those fucking synopses, like, read the synopses of Titan. It sounds like the most. Then she kills this person, then that happens, then this happens. It sounds like the most boring fucking movie. But it really is a case where you have to see it. You just have to see it.
What I love about Baskin account's work, it's when we talk about when we talk with Can, it's when he takes a very brutal horror, but at the same time the two dimensions, the onirical, the dream dimension, the realistic dimension, and these two dimensions converging in one moment in time, and that's very well. We talk about Borges and Cortázar also. Well, you read the short stories I sent you from Cortázar, and that's a very Julio Cortázar, the idea of dreams becoming another dimension. So if dreams are another dimension, hell would be like a nightmare or something like that. But it's real. It's happening. Hell is real, and it's you know, I know if we can call it a parallel universe, and that's what I love about the narrative and the aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Baskin.
Hell is the Argentinian economy right now. I'm just saying.
No.
Yeah.
Do you remember the short story of Cortázar, The Night Face Up, the man and the... I've seen a lot in horror films, especially. That's why I'm always asking if they know Borges, if they know Cortázar, because there's a lot of common ideas.
But they took a lot from Lovecraft. I'm sorry, but the father of horror of this century is Lovecraft.
You know, it's funny. There's in Los Angeles. I'm not there for it, but there's a French, the Directors Guild is having a French film festival for the next couple of weeks, and of new French films, and I'm just so curious to see what they're showing, and if there are any horror films in there. I'll have to check it out.
No, you have to check out when I'm looking for horror gems. You have to go to the indie festivals. Now, for example, Korea, from Asia, from Latin America, we have 1,000 now. Now, in Mexico, we have Morbid, Macabro, Buenos Aires Rojo Sangre. I mean, I'm watching them all because I'm finding like really gems. I mean, it's incredible. And now it's easy to access to all that. For example, in Germany, you have to start watching the indie horror film festivals. That's the key. That's where you find the idea.
Germany.
Because they are in any country. I mean, we have Night Visions from Sweden. We have also Fright Fest that our Alan Jones is there in London. So there you will find. I will send you a list because now we are creating this network between different festivals, and that's when you're going to find the new films, because the directors there they are afraid to try new things. There's no taboos. There's no politically correctness. Even in the States, there's a lot of horror film, indie horror film festivals actually. Well, the Scream Fest is kind of indie, I think.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. It's I'm wondering where I can watch Nocturna.
Nocturna. Yeah, we have to send Clara. Please help me with this. Send to Gonzalo.
You guys seen it? Has everyone seen Nocturna?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Everybody will see Nocturna.
I think it's great. It's great. It's a great film, and you should definitely watch it because it's a must see.
Okay, I just got to figure out. It just screened in LA.
There should be a screening in LA.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because the problem with the film is it's winning a lot of indie festivals, but for some reason it's under the radar of the big festivals. So everyone that has watched the film will tell you the same thing. It's a masterpiece. It's very emotional. So I will get you the link. Watch it, and if you consider it really worth it, maybe we can organize something in LA. I mean, something small from here. I don't know, because I mean,
love to do that. I would love to screen it. I mean, I can provide a screening room.
That would be great.
I'm wondering if the director's been signed by an agent yet.
No.
Well, that is interesting for him.
Because he has an enormous talent. Actually, it's his fourth horror film. In Amazon, he has Resurrection, Luciferina. They are all gothic, and they are so.
But this is his best film.
No, but this is by far his best film. But
this is his best film.
It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. Yeah, I agree with Juan Pablo. It's really a masterpiece, and it's a very low budget film. And you couldn't believe the quality of the image, the photography, the music. I mean, if I tell you the budget of these kind of films, you wouldn't believe. I mean, that's the low budget forced you to find new ways to do film, to bring quality with not with few resources. And again, when you watch the film, we see, my God, this is really high quality, and you will find that the budget is really, really low. It's about creativity. How it would blow your mind.
Most of the horror films here in Argentina, for example, are made with low budgets and a lot of talent of the people that are behind camera doing stuff with blind air, because they are like a sort of I think every team here in Argentina is like a sort of MacGyver combination of people that say, okay, now I'm going to puff, and suddenly something appears out of the blue with, I don't know, a stick and a towel, and suddenly you have a monster. And that is something amazing about the talent of the people that are here making films in Argentina, because maybe they don't have the money to do these films. And I would tell you something about Baskins that we talked about, the director. He made it with almost no money. The film was made with almost no money. He was in debt. He just borrowed money from his parents. He told us that he didn't have any money to do the film, and he made such a spectacular film. I mean, honestly, when he told us that, I thought that it was really similar to things that happen here, for example, in Latin America. The people are very resourceful because they don't have maybe money, but they have talent and they have stories to tell. And that is the important thing, because I prefer to watch a very good film with a good story. For me, a good film is a good story. You can have like a million bucks blowing down your face and to make a film, but if you don't have a good story, you don't have a film. I mean, it will be thrown away to the fire.
By the way, there was a movie I saw about a movie theater. It was a kind of a
Al Morir la Matinee.
Yeah.
Al Morir la Matinee. Yeah, Max, he's a friend of us, Maxi Contenti. He's from Uruguay. Also low budget.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was kind of a Argento.
Yeah, it is.
I feel a secret. It's an homage to an indie filmmaker from Uruguay called Ricardo Islas. That from the 80s, he did like 65 low-budget indie with a VHS camera. And it's an homage to this director, but that, by the way, is the killer, is the one that plays the killer. And the movie being screened is the movie of this director. It's a genius. It's called Ricardo Islas, and living in Chicago now.
I wondered what if they had made that movie that was showing, or if it was a real
Yes.
movie. Now I know.
It's a real movie made by Ricardo Islas. I think he was that one was filmed in Chicago, but he's an amazing creative guy, and also and he's in the States right now living, and the whole movie is an homage to not only the slasher genre but to the Uruguayan genre.
But wait, what? The first director is it's acting as a serial killer in the movie.
Yeah, Ricardo, yes.
Like a
I
sort
talked
of
to him last week.
Cronenberg vibe.
Yeah. And he told me that the eyes were made of tomatoes, white, I don't know.
Los tomates cherries.
But yeah, Maxi Contenti, the director, is a very talented guy, and again, what I love about the film is the aesthetic, and it was made, I think, in 20 days, because they have no time. The theater that you see in the movie, it doesn't exist no more. It's a traditional cinema from Montevideo that was going to be closed forever. So they have like 20 days to make the film. As you can see, that's the way of doing films, now or never.
Good. It looked really nice.
Yes.
But not French.
And
no French.
Yeah, no, well, of course.
You know that Gaspar Noé is Argentinian. He's from Argentina,
yeah.
And he's making core French films, but he's an Argentinian director. He's from here. And all of his films are French. He makes French horror films, and also sort of like, did you see Love? His film?
Love, no.
Well, it's
a great
it's a great film. It's a very intense film also. Maybe some people will say that it's like porn.
Movie of his.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah.
Like it's very sexual and very like visually impacting. But I will say that he's an Argentinian director that works in France making French horror films.
Yeah, Gaspar.
Just so you know.
One of my favorites Gaspar Noé film actually is the first one. Seul contre tous. It's like in English would be Alone Against Everyone. I don't know if you watch the film. For me, I don't know, Brannon, which is your favorite Gaspar Noé? Because he is part of the extreme French, although he's Argentinian, but he's part of the way French.
Yeah, I mean, that's by the way a whole other cinema topic of expatriates. You know, a lot of the directors who come and live in America, but who bring a certain sensibility, from.
I would really love to see more indie. Well, I'm actually now in contact with a lot of indie American horror film, and I think there's a lot of talent there hiding maybe in the state, but not in the mainstream. Because again, in the mainstream, it's impossible to do these kind of films. I think it would be impossible to do. Well, I'm sure they will do a remake of Titan, like they did with Martyrs, but it's not going to be the same. I wish.
I'm sorry.
Unless you're Haneke and you do fun games.
There's no
way.
To me also, they're not going to make a remake of Titan.
That's not going to happen.
Because she's not going to let it happen. I think that there is a difference there. I think that the director has like a very emotional relationship with her film. And I think that when you give it up for a remake, maybe it's something it's really something very, very delicate, giving up your film for a remake. Because
I can tell you, it is, as someone who's made some movies and stuff, it's almost impossible to make something. It's almost impossible to make something well, and particularly something so that to make that movie work, almost took magic. I mean, it
On
shouldn't have
paper,
worked.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So to think that you could possibly do it again is absurd. And it's the same as Martyrs. I don't even think was that even. I know they remade it. I didn't see it. You know, it's just like why,
Don't.
you
You don't
Don't.
have to.
bother. I mean, why bother?
But there is a
Because-
lot of
no,
remakes going on. I mean, when Rec, the Spanish film, was released, that it was a success. The same moment it was released, like in Spain, it was bought like instantly by USA. I don't know which production, and it was made a remake. And I think that it's so different, the film, like the Spanish version against the English version. I think that and it was a masterpiece when it came out. Rec, I don't know if you saw it, the Spanish version of Rec.
No, I'm right.
It's a very
about zombies.
no, it was one of the best films. I think it was released in 2009 or 2008, 2009. And it was instantly bought to make a remake, and it was a really bad remake that it was done in comparison with the perfect film that I saw in the Spanish version. So
Yeah.
Yes, in my case, I have another example that I think it's one of the best examples in my experience. That I first watched Let Me In, and then I watched Let the Right One In, the Swedish one, and completely different movies. It's a different vibe, a different aesthetic, a different.
but that is because the
topic.
culture also it's different.
Yes.
It's different. It's like when a film is done in a place where it's a completely different culture, it's difficult to make a remake. It's difficult.
Swedish horror. That was Swedish, right? So
Yeah.
it had a certain vibe to it that was, you just couldn't. I mean, a lot of horror is atmosphere, and you're never going to recreate that feeling that movie had. And
The slow burn,
genuinely
the place.
scary. That meant Let the Right One In was genuinely frightening, I thought. And the remake wasn't horrible, but it's just a different movie. It was.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. I'm hoping, you see, Netflix carrying more and more material from other countries, and having branched out to other countries, and there's so much like Squid Game is a fascinating example of a worldwide phenomenon. It's the most popular show on the planet right now, and well, I don't think they can remake it because what are you remaking? People have seen it. Everyone's seen it, and maybe that will change, and more people will. I wish there was a streaming service for people like us that had, horror film, non-traditional or horror films that from other countries.
Well, Shudder is getting there. Like the platform Shudder, it's getting there.
They are getting there. They not at first they weren't, but now you're right. They have some fascinating documentaries too. Like if you haven't seen the one on The Exorcist, it's really good. The William Friedkin interview. The only interview he's ever really done. It's absolutely fascinating. So yeah, Shudder is getting there for sure.
I think we need more, even though there are some more like independent, maybe Spanish version. There is a Spanish platform that I cannot remember right now the name, that is also like specialized in horror films. The Spanish horror from Spain is really beautiful. I really love Spanish horror films. And there is a platform there, a Spanish platform. You know that they're very extremist with the Spanish over there. Like there is no English films in Spain in the cinema. If you see an English film, it will be dubbed
I know.
Spanish. Like
When I
they are really like severe with no English policy.
I
Like
I went to go see the last Jurassic Park movie.
Mhm.
I was filming in Spain, and you are correct. They didn't even. I figured they'd at least have subtitles, or nope, it was dubbed. And fortunately, I could follow the movie anyway, because there are only so many ways to say, run and
Yeah.
watch out. But yeah, I was surprised. I'm like, oh, they're not. They took all the English out.
Mhm.
they're really like nationalistic in Spain with the Spanish.
Yes,
Well, in
we have a lot
France, they
of
are
pride
also like
about it.
anti-English.
Yep.
They're really proud of their language. But I mean, I am a huge fan of watching the movies in their own language and
Oh yeah,
reading the subtitles,
absolutely.
because you lose everything with
Oh,
just by listening to another version of dialogue in another language. It's a
what
different
about?
film.
Yeah, I mean,
Speaking about
Mm.
Squid Game, the dubbing in English became a meme in the whole world,
¿En serio?
it's
No
you.
sabía.
Yeah. By the way,
everywhere.
the lead performance by that I don't know the actor's name, but the lead performance is such it's a very comic manic performance, but it's very heartbreaking. And if you have the dubbing on, it completely ruins his performance. It's not him.
Because
And
that is the culture of Korea. Like when you see Korean films, sometimes it's very intense
heightened emotion,
because
heightened. Yeah.
yes, and they are very exaggerated with some things, and the comedy they use, it's really like exaggerated,
Effusive.
and maybe we don't understand if we are used to Occidental ways. But I watch a lot of Korean and Japanese and Chinese films, and I'm
Where are you
huge like otaku.
watching these movies? How are you getting?
What?
Where are you watching these movies?
I watch them like I
Because
have dark places going on here, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really legal stuff going on. No, but I have to watch them because since I was a little girl, I am a huge fan of mangas and anime, and also the Japanese horror. The first time I got in contact with a Japanese horror was in a Rolling Stone magazine that I bought, and I think I was 10 years old, and I bought it, and I saw that they said that the horror was starting to become a boom in Oriental films, and I was blown away. And I was where do I get this? And there are some places where you can look at them, like you put the name of the film and you can watch anything. So with just getting the films, like maybe you get top 10 best films, or maybe what I do is I watch one director and I watch everything of that director, and then I stalk like what is this director's influence, and then I'm sort of like a special person. Like I really get involved with the.
If you want, I can send you a lot of links. I remember when we talk about your film, Book of Blood, and you asked me where did you watch it, because it wasn't released in Latin America. I said torrent. Well,
The thing is that I want to say something. It's not. I really support the cinema, and I love to go to the cinema. But there is something really bad that goes on here, especially in Argentina, in Latin countries, that you don't get to see films that are not box office. I mean, Titanic is not going to be projected in a theater here. It's not going to be projected. I
Even
won't
Portrait
see.
of a Lady on Fire.
No, Suspiria wasn't even on theaters right now. If it's not Marvel, or if it's even the national films aren't even on theaters. I can just see Marvel, and I don't know, maybe one Jurassic Park.
I love cinema. I love to go to the cinema, but sometimes I have no option. I mean, we use torrent and all these websites because we have no option. I mean, I would love to see all the movies in the cinema, but nowadays
We
all
have
the
no option
all the
and no
movies
access.
involved by the same companies, and it's Marvel, Marvel, Marvel.
Mhm.
And you know that
I
here
mean,
we have like, well, it's starting to die, thank God, but the soap operas here are still like a thing. So you have this sort of culture. I wish that this soap operas just die once and for all, but I'm waiting the slow death that is beginning right now because the new generations do not watch soap operas. But
No,
that
we
influences a
criticize them.
lot in what theaters buy to project in the theaters. I mean, people want to see, no sé, a romance film, a comedy film, or a horror film that it's box office. If it's
Mhm.
not like a sort of a Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio film, it will not come to the theater here. I mean, I won't. I never saw a French movie on theaters here in Argentina. I just have to look at them and just try to get them. Well, I studied philosophy, and when I studied in the university where I studied, there were lots of people that sold like DVDs. I remember, and I could buy like all of the French horror. There was like places where I could just buy everything, but it was all like it was all stolen. It was not the real deal. I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
that's where it all
But
started.
there's a certain joy in that too. I mean, I remember when The Ring was being handed around as a VHS tape appropriately, and someone just saying you need to watch this, and there's something kind of fun about seeing a movie that you had to find. You may be able to tell it's getting dark here. So
You're just a shape right now. Like I cannot tell who you are just
But it
because
has
of your
character.
voice.
I really hope that you'll invite me back for more discussion, guys.
Of course, we can do a Spanish horror because the horror from Spain is amazing. They have a tradition, you know, bueno, Ibáñez Serrador. I mean, it's amazing what they have done in. Don't worry, I will send you the emails with a lot of sites where you can download the films.
But I really, what I really want to do is see Nocturna.
Yes,
Oh yes,
please.
I have to find out how to see the movie.
Mándasela, Adri. Mándasela.
I know they have no subtitle. I have to ask Gonzalo, the director. Help me with Gonzalo. Send, we have to because now I don't know. He's too busy right now. Send him a message to send so they can send you a link. No, because you will see what we are talking about. And
Brannon,
yes,
you just have to learn Spanish before watching the film.
you
So just get
speak
to
Spanish.
it.
I know you speak Spanish. Yo sé que hablas.
I speak a little Spanish, but I don't want to have to worry about it in the movie.
Of course.
Makes sense.
But you know that watching films is a good exercise to learn a language.
I know.
I learned English and French watching films. Actually, now I can speak French, and it's I learned by watching films. Really, I mean, I'm trying Russian right now. It's kind of hard.
Oh wow!
You speak Croatian by she speaks Croatian.
But it's the same.
Yeah,
it's like speaking Portuguese and Spanish, Croatian and Russian. I can understand what they're saying, but in a context. I mean,
well, if I can watch, if the only way I can watch Nocturna is without subtitles, I will definitely do that. I really want to see it.
But get your subtitles, Adri, dale.
I will call Gonzalo. Right now.
That's the basic thing you have to do to a film. Make it universal.
I will call him right now, and I will send you the link. Yeah, I know.
That's the one thing
Yeah,
I think most good horror movies have in common is they're not super talky.
yeah, yeah. And you will find that this movie is not super dark. That's a good thing, actually.
Um,
Well, yes, Brannon.
yeah, thank you guys. It's and keep me. I'm going to have a little more time in my hands now that I'm done shooting this project. So keep
Oh,
me.
what
Oh,
projects?
can you tell us about the project?
Oh, it's not a horror. It's oh, it kind of is. It's called The End Is Nigh, and it stars a guy, a science, Bill Nye the Science Guy, who's famous here anyway in Canada.
I know him.
But he it's a show, an hour-long show that depicts the end of the world, some terrible disaster in the first half hour, and then the second half, so it's like a disaster movie, and then the second half hour is how science can save us. And so it's
perfect guy for the movie.
Well, I love science, but I also love disaster movies, so it's been fun, cool. Blowing things up and flooding and doing all that.
And you get like one take for those things, or do you get like a couple?
Oh, you got to have multiple takes. You have at least 3. I mean, if you're doing, like I did there's a scene where a woman is in a cafe where there's a storm surge and her cafe is underground. So she basically is looking out at an aquarium out of this big window, and it breaks and floods, kills her and everyone inside. And we had to break. It involved blowing out a window with 20 tons of water. And we got to do it 5 times.
Okay.
It's a lot, 5 times. I mean, you had to make.
Oh yeah, the setup. Wow. It's like 3 hours to reset the gag. But
so it was 2 days shooting that.
There was a whole day of shooting. A second unit did nothing but that. But I love shooting stuff like that. Big stunts and pyrotechnic effects and stuff like that. That's fun. That's fun for me anyway.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, and then we can organize for next time Spanish horror. So
let me know. This is so much fun. We could obviously talk for hours. Not that anyone else is interested.
We should create a podcast or something. Well, thank you, guys. See you.
Brannon, next live you have to do it in Spanish.
Next
live, just in Spanish.
Okay.
Okay.
A little bit of
Block contact. Never again spoke Brannon.
That's intimidating.
Bye.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye. Bye.